Our next record is another pretty big name in the current landscape, trying to make some pretty big plays themselves. It's Zeal Ardor, and a self-titled record that I believe is out today on February the 11th. Zeal Ardor have become one of the most genuinely popular new metal bands in today's world. This was a band who caught people's attention pretty en masse from record one, which happens so rarely when a band pops up and suddenly they are like the big band that everyone wants a piece of. It really sets the ones who do out as kind of major players in this scene if they can endure that initial wave of hype, which I think it's fair to say with Zeal Ardor they have done. They made a record, Devil Is Fine, basically like an elevator pitch record for a sound, wasn't it? It was like a combination of extreme metal and like chain gang style rhythm and blues chanting and soulful vocals and stuff. Still has my favourite Zeal Ardor songs on it, I must say, like Devil Is Fine, Come On Down.
That is wicked.
Yeah. Children's Summon, but quite rapidly a follow-up, Stranger Fruit, fleshed that style out into a more well-rounded, longer album, which is what people were looking for. That was 4 years ago. It's been quite a while since we had an actual Zeal Ardor album, and yet it never really feels like they went away, even during the pandemic, because we've been drip-fed things like those the 2020 George Floyd protest songs that were put out, and they've generally maintained quite a grip on the metal public's imagination. This is a band who, from record to record, we are all willing to grow and further flesh out what they do, like we were just saying with Venom Prison. After 4 years since Stranger Fruit, which itself was a step from Devil Is Fine, do you guys count yourselves amongst those who are like keenly watching what they might do, and how are you feeling about their progress up to this point?
I mean, I've been sold on this band since like day one. I fucking love this band, and like I know that a lot of people will like Devil Is Fine. I think the kind of, it's a lot of ideas but not a lot of songs. It's like, what I guess I still really like that, but kind of like what you said, it was an elevator pitch. Like it was someone on 4chan just said something quite offensive to Manuel, the kind of guy behind this, and he was like, right, I'll turn that into some songs then. He just smushed together extreme metal and these chain gang chants, and that's what came from it. But watching it grow into an actual band, and like actual narratives and things like that going on within the records and EPs and stuff has been such a cool thing to watch. And like I think the thing about them is, even if you're not fully sold on them, I think they're just a fascinating concept, because what else sounds like this? And because of that, it's like, well, I want to see where that goes.
So you've kind of nailed my feelings on them a bit there, because I respect and admire Zeal Ardor more than I sort of outright like them. I think Manuel in particular, as an artist, really interesting, really like genuinely creative sort of mind. They have carved their own sound, their own identity out through combining styles and genres, and they've done something really distinct that people have latched onto that I think at its best is absolutely brilliant. But I've never totally fallen in love with them like some people have. But I don't think that's anything that they've not done to like win me over. I just don't know if that's just when my tastes line up. But I'm always interested to see what they're going to do.
Yeah, well, I say about them never going away, they released 6 singles for this, and I didn't listen to 6 singles because that's insane. But looking at this album and taking that, a kind of registering that across to 6 singles, there must be a real pick and mix feel to that, because this record, we are a long way past the internet experiment beginnings of the project that you were laying out there, Alec. They are, now well established, doing a sound and blending a couple of key elements. This record, to me, you can disagree with me if you like, but it sounds even more like a kind of eclectic pick and mix bag of ideas. Like even right through to the last couple of tracks, you are hearing, like, getting things that make you go, and kind of your ears prick up a little bit, like JMB. Mental song. Never quite heard anything quite like it. And I think that quality will hit you dependent on what you really wished for in Zeal Ardor. I always found myself admiring the fact that this band were carving a really unique space with what they were doing, and I felt that they should aspire to further cohesion in their music, get those things more closely in tune with one another and help the greater whole. Stranger Fruit was a start, but not all the way. And that's not what's happened here for me. If you are someone who wants to see even further experimentation and further even widening the margins of what ground is covered in Zeal Ardor, and you always want new elements to be pushed in to, I guess, stop a central gimmick getting stale, perhaps, this record may be exactly what you're looking for with them, because it's mental.
Yeah.
So you're not a fan of lo-fi beats going into soaring post-black metal?
Well, I'm not even going to say I'm not a fan of them, because I like this record, and I think it's just in terms of, like, I'm similar to you, Sam, in that I like Zeal Ardor. I think their records have been too scattershot to really hit on that kind of classic that people seem to be kind of bigging them up as. And I don't think this is that either, because it's all even more fucking all over the place. However, in terms of the sheer excitement of, like, wow, that's a mad idea. Oh shit, now we're over here. It is undeniably very, very exciting, and a record that you can't get too comfortable listening to.
Yeah, so again, that's kind of how I feel about that. This is even more scattershot. When I say, like, you get a song like Immersion, that is these sort of lo-fi beats, then it goes into the sort of like post-black metal thing where he's just screaming and it kind of goes back and forth. Totally unique combination, but it's the only song on the album that sounds like that. And then, like, you get Soul Survival following him up, which that goes full-on bluesy. Like, the album is all over the place in a really, in an exciting way, but it's kind of disorienting, and it lacks cohesion a little bit as a result.
I think that the kind of disparity, though, that's what makes it cohesive for me, because I'm so sold on this, like, world that he has carved out. Like, I buy into it, and I'm in the pocket, like, as soon as it comes in, with that almost like kind of god fleshy kind of like industrial droning. But like that immersion track that you're talking about, where it basically goes from like 808s and video game noises and ambient like kind of chamber poppy, like dreamy soundscapes into basically this blast of major key tremolo, like kind of Mole or Deaf Heaven or something. It is a bit wild, but basically he has another project called Bird Mask, which basically does the kind of poppy thing that you're talking about, and he's just mushed that into like a post black metal thing, and no lyrics, it's just screaming that. Like I love that, and just the kind of the actual like tunefulness of it, like Feed the Machine, which is not a Nickelback cover. It's like just the kind of bluesy hand clapping stuff. It's so, to me, it's so well realized. Like, 'cause as soon as he starts doing that kind of stuff, it's like, oh yeah, it's this guy, and it's the guy who does the kind of the chain gang chants. Like, that's this guy, and that for me is those moments that if I ever thought it was Wandering, which I don't, because I just fucking love it. That's what ties it together for me.
Yeah, definitely. The vocal hooks, like Feed the Machine, is one where I kind of noted down that it does have a particular, classic Zeal Ardor style vocal hook that is a very good realization of what this album is going for. I think Immersion is a real outlier in terms of how black metal it is, and that's not to say black metal is not super involved across the record. It's always, I think, going to be a core element of the Zeal Ardor genre blend. I think Immersion is a good example of when it goes for that full, euphoric post black metal thing. The production kind of suffocates it a bit into like that compressed crunching style, rather than having the dream house effect of that kind of dynamic depth. It sounds a bit more like Liturgy, actually, and that kind of like electronic battery in post black metal, because there is an industrial kind of battery again, abrasion, pummeling nature to the sound of this record. And I think the metal production, it doesn't sound as black metal as it once did, and instead it's produced by Will Putney, and there's this kind of the more Meshuggah and modern metalcore influenced kind of compressed crunch that you get. Something like Death to the Holy has this really tight palm muting style of riffing that's produced in that modern way. It feels to me like it's kind of traced some of the extreme metal ideas are sort of being traded out for like a larger commercial metal sound in its riffing, which, to be honest, that's where Zeal Ardor, they always seem to, I guess, have their bread buttered in terms of like fan base and appeal, like not in the underground. But that's a notable shift that definitely will dictate, like, your taste for that kind of riffing, I think, will affect whether this is, your favourite Zeal Ardor project or your least favourite.
It's more crunch to the riffing, really, isn't it? It's that metalcore thing. You're right. Like,
yeah, I kind of get the metalcore thing, but at the same time, I think it more sits in that kind of like we kind of like hinted at, the kind of industrial, like that.
Yeah.
That's what I get from the kind of that mechanical side of it, which is this is the furthest he's gone with that kind of thing. But
Gotterdammerung is particularly, I think, effective for that, like very caveman, just yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of that riff is arena conquering, like that ascending, like the how we can believe their lies when those fallen will now rise, and into that ascending riff, like fuck me. But that thing that you said about black metal, I think the initial conceit of Zeal and Ardor, like black metal and like blues and stuff, yeah, like that's it. That's never really what it's been. It's just been like the kind of bluesy thing, and metal / extreme metal. Like even on Devil Is Fine, there were like melodeath riffs all over that.
Yeah, I think that real festival bouncing kind of feel when a riff gets going on this record, that is quite a step, I think, from where they started. Like I Caught You almost makes it nu metal. Like
Yeah.
that is very much a notable shift. I really like Run on this. It has a similar feeling to Row Row, which I think was my favorite track on Stranger Fruit, in that kind of like panicked, imposing summoner of a great threat feel that you get from Manuel's vocal lines. Like he's really good at that, like he's chasing you down. And that against the stomping kaiju riffing on that, again, that is a cool new side to Zeal and Ardor that is going on. And I think, case in point really, there's a song called Church Burns, and it sounds more like an industrial pressing plant than it does a necro case of arson. I think it is much more suited to winning over a general audience today than an extreme metal audience.
Yeah, it's more Ministry than Marduk, like absolutely.
Yes.
But I think that sort of move towards industrial is going to work in their favour and just make it like more widely sort of accessible, or something that could go on bigger stages.
That's
like
what I'm saying,
like,
yeah.
like Bow is another one that has like a real sort of crunching industrial.
Is that the one where he
sound
goes,
to it.
bow down to the American way? That's
yeah.
really good. Yeah, when he gets the anger in his voice.
But like Church Burns, I think might be my favourite song on the album, because I think it is just the best blend between the really kind of like soulful gospel kind of vocal with that industrial metal like machine underneath it. Sounds really cool.
Yeah, like when that abrasive side gets pushed, it is still capable of being so much more antagonistic and horrible than most rock music that gets pushed en masse. Like in a race, there's that fucking just psycho stabbing like guitar playing, and I love the verses on Death to the Holy with that kind of weird fragmented dissonant piano groove like around the chanted vocals. Like it is uncomfortable, and it is much more demanding than most things that would conceivably land in similar areas of appeal to Zeal and Ardor. I think one of the larger things that stops me being as fanatical about Zeal and Ardor as you, for example, Alec, and a lot of people out there, is sometimes I find the dynamics of songs to be quite basic and just doing a kind of quiet, loud thing with some bits that bands don't usually have together. And there are songs when he leans fully into one side of things, like Golden Liar. It comes across as a little bit one track and never actually as impressive as it's striving for. But I think something like Erase is a really good example of getting kind of excitement and flow like inside songs. And there are elements of, laying down a foundation of rhythm and blues elements and then paying off with something inspiring that kind of gets a bit of awe. And I feel like that's what Zeal and Ardor should be striving towards in terms of the spiritual and kind of, alternate history kind of side of their music demands that sense of like terrifying grandeur.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we've not really even touched on. That originally the idea of Zeal and Ardor is, what if slaves instead of like worshipping God, they worship Satan and like broke free from their chains. That was the thing. And on Stranger Fruit, you had there was this kind of narrative about running away and kind of escaping. And on this record, there's some kind of narrative about like 13 years in chains. And he's said that he doesn't want to kind of give away the story, and he wants people to give their own interpretation. And I think often that seems like a cop-out, but I think in this case it is pretty genuine, because it is a very convincing narrative through it, even though I'm not quite sure what is happening all the way through it. But just like what you're saying about like how big all this is, and I get what you mean about like Golden Liar. You're saying it's a bit kind of like basic, I guess. But I think I'm fine with that, because it's one song and it does its job, and then there's all this mad shit around it as well.
I think you talk about the narrative, like he is a really compelling storyteller across these songs, like the way he delivers the lines. What's it in Erase where he says, "And there stands before you a gaping, unmoving maw." Like that sounds just so evil, and he nails those moments. and that kind of compels you through some of like the lulls in the album. I think is him being such a charismatic sort of figurehead for the band.
Well, he has to like Nick Cave and Tom Waits and things like that. 'Cause, like
absolutely.
That proper drawl he's got, the kind of like gritty storytelling quality.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, Zeal Ardor is moving further away from, I guess, making that kind of black metal masterpiece that I wanted them to make.
Yeah.
And instead, I'm kind of coming just to accept the fact that Manuel is mental and he's just going to keep fucking... Like, obviously, I wanted him to be inventive, but like he's going to just keep throwing so much in there all times. Like I wanted him to basically make Cobalt records with fucking massive hooks on them, and instead we are getting whatever the fuck this is. But it's that in itself makes it unique and truly one of a kind still. It is fascinating to see them maintaining that identity while continuing to mix up the pot, and some of the huge, just like, again, big stage kind of metal riffs you get in like I Caught You or something, they are quite thrilling to hear them go for that kind of scale. Zeal Ardor's self-titled record is out now,